All right. So, hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies, a place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. And without further ado, we're going to jump into this episode. But first, many of you might have noticed the last episode we did, there might have been some booze shared by all, and sometimes that means we talk over people because we're just really happy to talk to you. But we realize that doesn't make the best podcast, so we will do better.
It's the
And
quarantine happiness.
yes, we will blame Nick Cole because he's not here to defend himself, and he was the sober one, so he should have known better. So, and now we're going to jump right in. Without further ado, we're going to talk to our guest, Erica EA Shanniak. So, Erica, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a mom of two. I live in a small town in Malala, Oregon, and I do medical billing during the day. And in the times in between, I write all the romances. So fantasy romance, historical westerns. I'm writing a sci-fi reverse harem. And I gotta get that alien loving. But and I'm also editing currently a paranormal romance as well. So I just do all the things. I enjoy camping. I got two doggos. Love them. And I just live life as my tall 5-foot frame can allow,
Hey, short people need love too.
Are feisty.
Oh, I'm absolutely feisty.
It's because gravity is so close. It does that to you.
It can back all my anger.
Yeah.
So, JR, how did you find Anaya? Erica. Thank you.
So Erica and I actually met in the 20 books to 50K, I think is the name of the group. And they were talking about some of the things that you have to work, some of the things that you can act out with your friends and family to get the sequencing right for physicality in books. And it started talking about fight scenes. So like, does this chokehold work? It moved on to the romance bits that she writes. And it just went from there.
A very interesting moment.
And then the mods were like, get a room, you two. I know you're friends now, but take it off this chat because now you're not stabbing people. That's cool. We're talking about romance, not so cool.
But and no, so I have noticed that there are so many people who are okay with the stabby, but not the other
romance.
Spectrum.
Yeah, it's weird.
And it wasn't even like graphic. It was just
kissy.
It was just like tongue in cheek, like shenanigans, right? Like we were just goofing off. Like it was very much we were where it was a public group, but we were just having so much fun that I guess we just kept the thread that was at that point 3 months old going back and forth. But they're like, can we just let this be buried under all the So we stayed in touch. And then at the time she wasn't working her day job yet. So she was doing the housewife thing and managing like a dozen kids and like the dogs, like she mentioned. And so when she started publishing was right about the time I was. And so my mom volunteered to publish her stuff for her. So my mom could learn to help me later. And then she could focus on the words. And we've just sort of stayed in touch since then. And we're in the same writing accountability group.
Aw, that's so cute.
She shows up.
Accountability buddies.
Yeah, she shows up when she's not on phone calls with health insurance companies.
Well, you got to do what you got to do, man. Buy more books. No. That's what I do.
And we know you met her today, so.
Yes. So, sorry. It was a long day at work. So, because we're polytheistic, what do you think? Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, or Potterverse?
Lord of the Rings, hands down. Hobbit. I love Second Breakfast. It's my jam. I'm usually up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, about 4:30, like getting the words in. Just because it's like my time to just not be mom. And I can go pee by myself. Okay, that's a huge thing. Just going pee by yourself in the morning is like,
it is a treasure. It is a treasure.
It is. So I wake up really early and I, do all that. And so second breakfast is my jam because I have breakfast and I have second breakfast. Sometimes I have third breakfast. Like I'm a fat, happy little hobbit and I absolutely just love my life.
I love second breakfast because often I am not awake enough to remember that I had first breakfast. So, no, it is really weird. I will eat breakfast and then I am always hungry again at 10 o'clock.
I just love food. I'm a hobbit. And then when I do Renaissance Fair, over here in Silverton, Oregon, people will yell, "Hey, Hobbit!" I'm like, yes, I'm the Hobbit now at this fair event. I am called the Hobbit. I'm the Hobbit there.
That's awesome. That is
the best.
glorious. So JR is now sharing your cover, but because we like to do that. But also I wanted to ask, what is it that you love about the fantasy genre?
I love that I can create anything and like the sky's the limit. Like I can have like whatever I want in a book. There's no rules and regulations to anything. Like in my other series, the Western romance, where you have to stick to a time frame, where you have to if you're going to use currency of anything, it has to be correct. It has to be at the correct everything, you know, like the attire, the slang, the saloon, to like the place that you're going and the mileage and like whatever.
Yeah, I will admit that consistency really can make or break a world.
Yes. And so there's that aspect with fantasy, you know, it's whatever. Like in this series, I had a goddess is consistent throughout. I had shifters that were meddling, consistent throughout, but like I could add in randomness in there too. Like if I wanted to have like another shifter, that's possible. If I wanted to have, you know, the sky turning like, you know, tie-dye purple, that's possible. Like I could pretty much do anything that I wanted to do as long as I had a reason for that, and I was able to show that reason and sometimes tell, because telling is good, and I usually tell through dialogue, because I learned that through many edits. You show, you don't tell. But pretty much like, you know, the sky's the limit with fantasy, and I love that I could have mermaids and gargoyles and whatever. It's the best.
Okay, so which one's your favorite creature to put in?
Like in that series alone?
Well, you said mermaids,
or like
gargoyles. Like, which one would be your favorite to put in? Like, which one do you gravitate to all the time and again?
Shifters, mainly wolf shifters. I love them.
Well, you do have two dogs. And dogs are related to wolves and children, and those they are also pack animals. Somebody
and feral.
Finally, yes. I have one. I know this from experience.
Yeah, my children can be feral. I love them, but it's true. Like my daughter the other day, I was outside working and she just drops her drawers right there and goes pee. I'm like, what are you doing? She goes, it's the outside. I'm like, fine. Like,
well, you are in the country.
So. You can reach a toilet. You should do that.
Yeah, they're still feral. Like she's 9, but she's still feral.
So, okay. So where do you kind of put yourself on the scale? Are you more of a romance author or more of a fantasy author?
I'm more about the romance for sure.
Okay. So that's totally legit answer.
Yeah, it's about, you know, people coming together, and people, you know, have different struggles, and I found that readers, if you have a really relatable character, they'll go towards that and like that, like the characters coming together at the romance perspective, and then the fantasy is just extra, is what I found. So I try to make everything about the romance more.
So JR just pointed out I skipped 8 and 9, but we were flowing. So what's your first memory of watching or reading in the fantasy genre?
Oh gosh. Watching fantasy was Lord of the Rings. I fell in love with that. I was like,
hence your hobby.
I was like 11 or 12 when the first Lord of the Rings came out, and I was obsessed with Frodo. God, and then like later, I was obsessed. I was 12. I was obsessed with Frodo. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, okay, ew, Aragorn. So that was my first experience with fantasy, because my parents were really strict and I couldn't like watch anything. I couldn't watch Firefly. I couldn't watch Star Wars or Star Trek. Like they were very, you can't watch that. And
but Lord of the Rings is a literary classic.
It is, and I use that to my advantage. I'm like, I'm learning about this in school. Lie.
You are.
I know, right?
We got to do what we got to do, man.
If you weren't, you should have been. So you were just correcting a wrong.
I know. I'm 30 years old now, and I still haven't watched Firefly.
Advanced independent studies.
There you go.
literature. See, I can do this. So that love that led you to discovering storytelling and creative storytelling with your parents also led you into writing, right?
Yes. So that was my first fantasy experience, and then I snuck in books like The Chronicles of Narnia. I snuck and read those.
Literary classic.
Yeah. And Brian Jock's Red Wall and Mossflower series. I snuck in those too. I figured out that I could take off the school library thing, like the book covers. I would just carefully take a knife and slice open like the plastic cover, and then I put on like those like awful 90s garbage sack covers.
Oh my god.
That you make.
You're
and
like,
I would
you're like me. So I used to put my books in part because I would do hiking and backpacking in those Bible study things.
Mm-hmm.
What I also found is nobody ever asked me what I was reading.
Mm-hmm.
And they're big enough that you can fit like a David Weber or an Anne McCaffrey book or an Elizabeth Moon book in there with ease.
Yes. So
and everybody assumes you're reading the Bible, so they leave you alone.
Yeah, that's pretty much me. I snuck books and to Maura Pierce too. So I did what I could like to read that. So that was my first experience with fantasy, and I loved it. I craved it. But my first experience with romance was I was working hospice, and I did the graveyard shift. Yeah. And I had this Kindle that my husband got me for my birthday, and I would take that with me because at night you have to stay awake because you have to answer calls and you turn everybody. I had like 18 patients. I had to rotate and turn and do all that. And I would finish my rounds about like an hour, 15 minutes, hour and a half. And so I'd have this half an hour to do whatever I wanted to. So I read. And my first experience with romance and like the whole fantasy romance combination was I was reading this book and I had no idea what it was. I've got it for free off Kindle and I'm reading it. And it goes into this detail about like, you know, the detail. I got kids, so I'm trying to like
the details of I knew somebody who called it shoe shopping. The details of shoe shopping.
There you go, the deets. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like, I'm reading this. Like, what? I'm reading that. I'm reading that. And I'm liking it. Oh my God. And then I started like looking at like book covers. I'm like, oh my God, it's a romance. Holy shit. And so I went into this one lady's room because her call light come on. So I put down my Kindle. I walked into the room, answered her call. And then I see these stack of books on the nightstand. And I'm like, oh my God, those are romances. Oh my God, that's what old people read. And I loved it. And I'm like, oh my God, mind is blown. Cause here I am like at 18 years old, just like shit shocked. So, so that was my first dealing with romance. And then afterwards I couldn't look at myself in the mirror for like a couple days cause I liked it so much and I couldn't put it down and I wanted more. And I'm like, wait, this is no. It's like, no. And after
it was just a normal romance.
No, it was totally not just like a normal romance. It was straight up erotica.
Oh, so it was on the Laurel K. Hamilton end of the romance.
It was yeet. So I couldn't look at myself for a few days. So after I got
conference, they called those active romances.
Oh, they called them active romances. Well, we wouldn't want anything to be passive on this show, would we?
No. So many authors let their real life experiences influence the stories they tell. So were there any specific formidable moments that really shape the kind of stories you tell?
Yeah.
Okay. Go on.
Sorry, we're still giggling over active versus passive over here.
It's okay. So you write fantasy romance that's set in a non-modern era. It's sort of equivalent, I think, on parts like Middle Ages. So do you think your experience living out in the sticks and, doing the farm girl redneck thing has helped you tell those stories better?
Yes, it has. And same with the romance. I definitely have, practice before I write.
Actively.
So that helps.
Your poor husband.
You have to get the body parts right. So it helps, and I enjoy enjoy it, and also my husband helps me act out like battle scenes too. Like he'll just stand there and stare at me, and I'm just like, yeah.
Okay.
And he just like, it's like, okay, you done?
No, you're dead, and I will get you later. All right. So
no, that's how you keep a happy wife. Hey, speaking of,
he came in behind you if you didn't hear.
Yeah, he did. He
So
just got home.
transitioning away from the writing
like
side.
Beetlejuice, he knew we were talking about him.
Yeah, I bet I bet he heard it, like his skin was crawling. He's like, oh no. So transitioning away from the writing side, let's talk about things from the fan angle. So have you gotten any cool fan art or cosplay of your characters yet?
I have. So one of my
you
friends, I did not know this. Like I met her at the Renaissance Fair and we actually became really good friends. And it was like the final day of fair and she came up and she was like, I like your books. They're really pretty. I'm like, oh, thank you. And so she bought one and then I gave her my contact information, like Facebook and stuff. And we hit it off on Facebook and we've been friends ever since.
Aww,
and she loved my book and she made me like this homemade embroidered bookmark. And she's also made my Renaissance Fair outfits too, like later in life. Like, yeah, it was cool. It was awesome. And we hit it off. We've been best friends like ever since. And she dyed her hair red too. She goes, look, I'm Jordy. I'm like, oh, yay.
So is Renaissance Fair the same thing you did, Cisca, with the SCA? Like, is that the same?
No, they're akin, they're related. But so the SCA is the Society for Creative Anachronism, and it doesn't have, except for when COVID's involved, it doesn't really have an off season. So because of COVID and the risk factor, because most SCA events are camping. So, and it's really hard to do the sanitation you need for dealing with COVID in a camping environment. So it has shut down for that. But normally there is no off season, whereas Ren fairs are normally in a specific location and they're more fun. And I feel bad saying they're more fun, but they're more fun probably for the casual person that is just kind of coming in to do something, have fun. People in the SCA get really into their historical research. So if you don't want to do historical research, the SCA may not be your bag.
So for the Ren fairs that you go to, they have like people in the armor doing the sword fighting and all that too?
Yes, and they do like lab jousting too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is also the Ren fair is the Renaissance. SCA does 600 to 1600, sometimes a little earlier or later. So
are you able to use that for research for future books as you go and observe and see?
Tax right off.
Yeah. I go and I will ask like whoever's there. Like we have this one Renaissance group that goes a lot. It's called the Boom Pirates. And they know everything about like ships. And so I've asked them and I reached out to some of them about like, what ships were mainly prominent in this era, what do they look like, and what were these pieces that they would have on there, and they would tell me anything they wanted to know. It was awesome.
That's so handy because
it is, and that's
not lost in the rabbit hole of the internet.
Yes. So and then even trying to find it on the internet is just hard. So if I have like somebody that can do that and like, oh hey, this is what actually happened, I'm like, oh okay, yay, cool. And then they also have this Nordic Viking groups that will come in, and those ones are nice too, because when you're trying to like research history or like know anything about that and certain symbols, they are able to straight up tell you like, okay, this is a legit symbol, this one's a made up one.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's nice. I enjoy it.
Hey, that's fun.
So while you're at these Renaissance fairs or non-book signing events, do people ask for your autograph?
I have not had anybody ask for my autograph at all yet.
So you need to pay your kids to come ask for it so you can say yes next time. Like, come ask.
Gail Martin used to do that. She actually admitted to it. That she would have her kids like come up occasionally and be like, just kind of get the ball rolling type situation.
Oh my God, you're my favorite author. Can I get your autograph?
I just yell at people at the Renaissance Fair, and I'm like, hey, you. And they're like, what? And I'm like, come take a peek between my pages. You want to. And they're like,
I love that one.
And they just like look at me. I'm like, book pages? Like, come on. Or I'll hold up a book. I'm like, you want to take a peek between my sheets?
I love that. That's when John Hartness is come by my shit so I don't have to take it home.
And I usually yell at guys with their wives, and they just turn this like bright pink. Some do like from bright red, like top of their bald head all the way down. Some women just love it. You know, they think
I
it's
guarantee
awesome.
you, if you'd said that to my brother, he would buy your book just because you did that.
I had a couple people do that.
That's awesome.
Be like, you deserve this.
So have you spotted anybody out in the wild reading your books?
I have not, sadly. It's a small town.
This is true.
And I'm always home, so I don't ever leave my house to be able to spot people in the wild.
And they frown on people peeking through windows.
Spotted people in the wild.
So finally, do you have any weird or funny interactions with fans that since you started writing? And this can include your Renaissance experience.
No weird things from the Renaissance experience, but I've had this one lady reach out to me that was kind of creepy. She just straight up like started like in messenger messaging me. She's like, "Can I know everything about you? Can I have your address? Can I have your phone number?" And I'm like, I don't. How about you send me this at like my PO box? Like, and she goes, "Well, I want to know everything. Where do you live?" I'm like, "Okay, you're fun. No thanks."
Yeah,
Blocking buttons or something.
And it's always hard. And I mean, fans be aware, as much as authors really may want to know you and they want to hear great things, it is really hard sometimes to know where to draw. Like I'd say, because I have a kid too, and so it's like once things are out of the barn, you can't put them back in the barn. But it's also really hard because you don't want to alienate your fans who may be well-meaning and well-intentioned, and just not realize that they're coming across and pushing the wrong button.
I imagine horror and romance authors probably have that the worst as far as interactions with fans. Because, I mean, it's cool you nerd out over science. It gets a little creepier when you start nerding out over some of the romance. Like, did you see what they did in the bedroom on page 27? Like, that could get creepy.
Yeah, it was pretty intense with that lady. So I ended up just giving her my PO box address. I'm like, "Here, you can send me this." I have not gotten anything from her since I opened it, so I might have just turned her off, but whatever.
Well, you know, she may have been over enthusiastic and realized that she may have come on too strong, and so, and I'm sure she's probably still. I hope she's still loving and reading your books. But now, speaking of those books, tell us what you've done. Can you tell us about the various standalone novels and the series you've written?
So Jordy in Charge, I first started writing that after I had this friend that I'm not friends with anymore. We kind of just split apart, and I wanted to do something for me, and I always wanted to write. So I'm like, you know, I'm just going to jump right in and do it. So, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be that noob, and I'm going to make a book that no one's ever read before, and it's going to be fantastic because I'm going to do my love of historicalness combined with romance, but I'm going to make it like amazing. I'm going to add in fantasy because no one's ever done that. I haven't read a book about that, and turns out it's like a huge genre that everybody does. New moment.
That doesn't mean that your book's not original. It fits some boxes.
Yeah,
so that's not a problem.
It was a new moment for sure.
So you know, that's fine. Everybody has that moment. I mean, I've had people go, "Well, this," and I'm like, "So basically, it's this person meets that person." And they're like, there was one, and I'm like, so basically, it's Ilona Andrews, Eric Flint, and Mark Edelite got together, and they made a series together, and we got this baby. I went, yes, and I went, it's still cool. It's still original.
Yeah.
But you know, there's that theory in literature that there's 5 major stories and everything else is a riff off of it. So I used to think my teacher was insane. I'm starting to realize now that I have a few pounds of books that I've read that she might not have been as insane as I thought. Darn it, that moment. Luckily, she's not watching this. So, like boring books. So,
but yeah, so I started off
about the other ones. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh, you're fine. So I started off like thinking that, and so I started writing Jordy, and I wanted the strong redheaded person because I've always wanted to be a redhead, but my hair's too dark. So I'm like,
do it. You're pale enough you could do it. You just have to do a lot of bleach before you got it red.
I tried that. It does not pan out.
Do purple. It works really well. Like a dark purple.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Dark
so
purple would work really well for you.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
See, this is what happens. JR leaves and suddenly it was cosmetology hour. But now, well, cosmetology 5 seconds because I don't really know that much about it.
I tried different things with my hair. It doesn't really pan out. So I'm like, I'll stick with brown. But I've always wanted to be a redhead. So my first character was a redhead. And I pulled from what I knew and my personal experience to make Jordy as a standalone novel. And because I was in the 20 bucks to 50K group with JR and I was reading things about people saying, write what you know, because that's, you know, you can't just pull something out of your ass and think that's going to be great if you don't know it. So write what you know. So I'm like, okay, like, so Jordy has this kid out of wedlock. So I pulled that from my brother. My brother was 17 when he had his kid out of wedlock. He skedaddled. So did the girlfriend, skedaddled. And I was left helping to take care of this kid. So I'm like, okay, like that will be my main character. And in comes along Lochran, who she's going to have this romance with, which was when everything like simmered down with my family. Brian, my husband, came in and kind of made things better. So basically, like, as my husband's buddy put it, every single book of mine is basically 50 Shades of Brian. coming
How does he
into
feel about that though?
he just was like,
But you know, I think it's sweet that you love him and that you incorporate that in him in that.
yeah, he's my knight in shining armor. So he's my inspiration for like all my like male characters, because he's just so loving and endearing and helpful, and he's very supportive of what I wanted to do. Because when I came to him with this idea, I'm like, hey, how do you feel about me like writing a book? Is that okay? He goes, why would that not be okay? Like, why aren't you doing it? And I'm like, oh, like, okay, like I'll do it. So he's very supportive, and I love that about him. So all my standalones are basically 50 Shades and my husband.
So are all of them standalones, or do you have a series going?
They're all standalones, because like I
Okay.
didn't want to like make a series where it's confusing of like this picks up at this time and this one's different. So all the characters like intermingle. So like in book 1 there's mention of Cade Bonteva, and then book 2 there's Cade, and then book 3 there's Cade. But it make it so it's not
So
like
they're all like
confusing.
the same universe,
Yes.
but they're not sequential series. That's
Yes.
awesome. So you
Thank
can
you.
really, so our readers can just or our listeners can just pick up a book and go, okay, I can start here or I can start there, because yeah, and I've read some of those kind of series where it's really fun because you get kind of the chuckle, and you can see also like somebody's story may be done, like their story may be done, but you still get to see that person, because just because somebody's story is done doesn't mean the reader wants them to go away.
Exactly.
They may want to be like, but I still want to touch base and know, like, okay, did you have a boy or a girl? Like, what happened next?
And it's interesting too, because like Jordy's my first book, and then it's like you see this like slow progression of my work kind of getting better. Well, which is great, but like I love it. So like if I get to be like biased, I have a couple favorites in my Castro series, and the third one is Cletus Forge. Mm-hmm. So Jordy's my book baby; she'll always be my favorite. But my next favorite would be Cletus Forge, because it's based off my dad. Aww. So my dad, when I was a kid, he was a farrier, and I would get to go with him and watch him shoot these giant draft horses. Like, it was awesome.
Great job being.
Oh, it was great.
Anything with that much muscle in their feet.
Oh yeah, my dad's forearms are like huge, and the horses I got to sit on were huge too. So my dad was like, okay, if you're good and you listen, you get to sit on Buck and Bart, which are these 2 giant Clydesdale horses. And I could not remember Buck or Bart. I couldn't get them right. Like I was 5, so I couldn't call them. So every single one is Bert. So so in Cletus Forge, there's a horse named Bert, and she's a farrier, and like I just love that moment with my dad and spending that time with my dad, and
that's awesome.
Getting to go with him. So, and again, like Clete is like this crazy curly haired just balls to the wall lady, which is kind of like me. And here it comes in Cade Bonteva and is like, okay, let's chill. And that's my husband telling me to take a chill pill because like I can get like so high strung. I'm just going. He goes, can you just simmer?
You know, and it takes a special kind of love to hear that and listen to it and not get like I'm that person. I'd be like, no, go away. You're in timeout. I never said I was a good person. But so since they're all in this world, where did you come up with the concept for this world?
I just winged it. I
JR always likes to go, did you use a Ouija board?
No, I was in paint one day and I'm like, you know what? Scribble. And then slice, world.
Hey, whatever works.
And I'm like, okay. Because I want to give myself like a visual concept of like where things were. And then I'm like, okay. And then I just kind of stared at the page. I'm like, I'm winging it. And I started going for it.
Hey, that works.
I'm just old enough to remember the satanic panic where everything was going to make you like worship the devil in the 80s and 90s. So like the Ouija board was a common thing like you would do if you wanted to be edgy back in the day.
I don't know where you were. I swear.
You were in Saudi Arabia. It's not like you were in the real world, all right?
Not in the 90s. Okay, I came back in 91.
I was born.
Okay. Kids these days.
He's an adorable child.
I was born in 90.
Oh, goodness gracious.
This is reminding me of that moment where somebody looked at me and they're like, guess what? Checking driver's license is really easy. If it has a 1 in it, you're guaranteed to be old enough. And I'm like, oh God.
Well, you know you hit old when the music you heard as a child when it was first out is on the oldies station. I'm like, no, that's not oldies. You go away.
I put on Britney for my daughter. And she's like, what is this?
You guys cut out for a second.
I said I've been old for a very long time because of Saudi. Most of they were already on the oldie station when we came back.
This is true. So before we dig in, you've got a really nice cover. We've showed it earlier, and I'm going to show it again. But can you tell us the origin story for how you came up with that while I get the share going?
Sure. My first cover, Jordy, I went on Shutterstock and I was just searching for just basic images of what my character I wanted it to look like. And then I stumbled upon this. I'm like, you're my girl. Love you. And I bought it. But yeah, I was very picky. I wanted a girl shooting a bow with red hair. And I'm like, okay, that to me looks like my main character. So I try to buy covers based on what my main character looks like. Of course, Cletus forged an exception to that because she has curly hair and you don't really find many curly haired models.
So is this like a take on that Disney movie? Was it the Scottish chick?
Brave?
Yeah.
I love how we know what he's talking about in.
Yeah, Brave came out in like 2017 when I wrote it, but it didn't.
No, I'm not saying you copied it. I was just
not that as curly as Madeira's. And yes, I know the person in Brave.
Ooh, all right. I've been told.
It's an horrible movie. Though if I am ever arguing with my mom and I see it, it makes me want to like be more emotional. Because it's all about like a mom fight with her daughter, and that's like bad.
So what you're saying is, to get us back on your books, is that Disney stole the idea from you.
I wish I could claim that.
All right. So following that, what do you think? Because I don't know anything about the cover industry for the romance genre or even really fantasy. Yeah, shut up. So what do you think makes a good fit for the fantasy covers in general?
Fantasy covers usually just have like the main character and sometimes just a male model if it's a romance on there, and usually like some sort of magical or like setting. And for me, I was like, not conforming, not gonna do that. And I'm like, I want my main character, and that's it. So I just went off on my own thing, no research, no nothing. I winged it, and I wanted it, and I got it.
Okay. Well, that's good enough. So are you going to keep taking that unique and eclectic approach as you go forward with your covers, or at some point are you going to shift them to be more in line with what everyone else is doing?
I'm gonna keep it going. Absolutely.
I like this vibe better than a lot of the classic romance covers, or they scream bodice stripper.
Yeah,
And,
or it's like
it's like the hunky man, but I'm like,
I don't like that. It's the hunky man. It's a Fabio cover that's grabbing the by the neck. It's supposed to be like, oh, endearing, but this looks so forced. And I'm like, yeah, no Fabios for me. Thank you.
yeah, I like this one. She looks like a badass. She looks fun.
And I wanted my character to be that. And she is. Jordy is a complete badass. She's very independent and she's very much her own person. And I love that about her. And I'm gonna do spin-offs of these characters eventually, of like, so Jordy and Lachlan, no, try not to do a spoiler, but in the end, in my next spin-off series, they have a kid and the story will be about their kid. So be coming back like a first full circle.
Wait.
Yeah.
Let me get this right. You wrote a romance novel and they end up falling in love, getting married, and having babies?
Yeah.
How dare you spoil it?
Valid point. So,
so
I'm not giving away the name.
But I like that, you know, because I mean, love comes in many shapes and forms, but there's nothing wrong also with it being a more traditional cycle. So
I'm just saying, if my main characters have a kid, the kid's getting a spinoff. There you go.
There you go. That's not a spoiler. If let's roll the dice and see what happens.
So let's talk about that if in that book. So why don't you give us the 30-second elevator pitch for this novel?
Oh, biscuits. So Jordy in charge, she is a princess that falls in love, thinks it's going to be the highlight of her life, turns out to be her darkest hour, and she's just trying to swim in this sickening thing that's trying to pull her under, and she gets kicked out, loses her title, and she's like, okay, I'm left to my own devices, what do I do? And instead of dying like her parents wanted her to do, she bucked up and she thrived, and she made a life for herself, and not only for herself but for her kid. So she taught herself how to use a bow and arrow, she taught herself how to hunt, she taught herself how to gut animals, she taught herself how to be the independent woman that she is. And so for her, she had to learn how to fall in love again and to trust somebody again, because when you're that broken and you're left to your own devices, which me pulling from my own experience, you have to allow yourself to be comfortable enough to trust again. And that's what Jordy has to learn.
Okay. Next question is you, so we can try to get back to the happy space.
Okay. So, 1 second. Sorry. I didn't move my document along. So, what is it that makes your series really special and unique on its own?
I pull from my own memories, whether they're good or bad, and I tried to incorporate that into like a real world standing in like my own universe. So like, you know, Jordy, here she is, you know, a pregnant teenage mom, forced to thrive. My parents kind of left me to my own devices at 9 years old, and I had to figure things out. So there's that. And I try to pull from my own things because it's what I know me best, but also because I think it's a lot of people can relate a lot to it too. So it's just more than a story to me. It's a journey that these characters take.
That's great. And it really, I feel like that sounded flat, but no, I really think it is. And it is great because you have to write what you know, as you said, and it rings false or true if you really don't know something. But what tropes did you pull in, and do you think you use either fantasy or romance?
I use mainly a lot of romance tropes, like enemies to lovers, Jordy, kind of like.
See, I read so little romance that the romance tropes are new to me still. So I don't always like. I can read a fantasy and I'm like, that's a trope. Oh, I can tell you that trope. This is what's going to happen next. But I don't read enough romance, so I've only started reading romance in the last year or so.
Yeah, there's a lot of tropes with romance. So like
JR,
enemies to lovers.
when I refer to them, he's like, "Oh, did you discover a new new genre, Cisca? And I'm like, yes, go away.
And then there's also like slow burn where it kind of like is building up to it, and then there's like kind of like the clueless romance where she doesn't have a clue. That's Irie, because like Irie's story, which is the fourth standalone, was the hardest for me to write because it is me. Is I took my past and what I had to deal with, put that into Irie so she could build up to the romance of where she kind of finds herself. And upon finding herself, she finds how that she loves Matthew, which to me, Matthew is again my husband. So, so it's a kind of a slow burn romance and self-discovery, and kind of like the clueless romance where I like you, but I don't know if you like me, and kind of just, playing that hard to get, seeing like throwing darts at a wall, seeing if they stick kind of a thing, trope, whatever that trope is, because I just winged it.
So Saska's idea of a trope for romance is I'm going to stab you in the face and you will like it.
Oh, that's
Because
cute.
she's evil, because most medics are. They're evil. We keep them around, but they're evil.
You know what? I knew enough that when the guy said, "Oh, I'd let you give me a silver bullet," that I just told him, "No, you need way more help than I can do." Which, by the way, if you are not a medic and you're listening to this, that at the time was the slang term we were using for when you put an IV up the rectal space.
And on that
guy was too desperate for me to deal with.
And on that note, we just lost our family-friendly rating, but we'll move right along. So let's talk about the story.
That was medical. It was not family-friendly, and it wasn't anything. He didn't know what he was agreeing to.
So that sounds like someone set him up. But either way, we're going to move along.
Probably. It was the army, and he was a baby infantryman.
Poor guy. So now let's talk about the story itself. So why don't you tell us more about Geordie specifically? What makes her unique in the crowded field of fantasy and or romance?
Lots of romances that I read or have read that are historical. The female character has like a problem, but she's so demure and she's so just polite and poised that she just kind of just floats along. Like, so she's not brave. And Geordie is in your face, I will tell you off, I don't need you. And she's just
bold as her hair.
Oh yeah, pretty much. She's as bold as her hair, yes. And the romance, like the romance side of that, a lot of readers from what I have seen, and a lot of authors use these big, bold female characters that don't need a man, yet they fall in love with the man. So like I pulled from that romance side, and I didn't want to make a historical demure woman because that just to me is kind of boring. So I made Geordie, and I wanted her to stand out. I wanted her to be bold and to be brash and to be brave and to not take shit. So she doesn't.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, that was it.
I was going to say, once upon a time when I was in high school trying to understand women, I thought I'd read romance novels so I could understand. Yeah, it didn't work. So at least yours seems a little bit more common sense than what was available in, I guess, the 90s was Harlequin stuff. I gave up after 3. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
The point for you for trying. God, you were a boy.
Like I use the Harlequin style romance. Like I use member and phallus. Like I don't use like, the noose. The other kids,
the other ones. So we're gonna save you from yourself on that one. And
Thank you.
You've talked about Geordie and you've talked about her love interest, but what about secondary characters? Are there any that you particularly enjoyed or you feel like that were memorable for you as the author?
Yes, Ara Morin. And
can you say that one more time?
My character Ara Morin, and I love this character so much because when I was going through my edits, Lauren Moore from Keystroke was editing me, and she goes, "This is not fantasy." I'm like, "Yeah, it is." Like being a noob. I'm like, "What do you mean it's not fantasy? Like you don't know what fantasy is." Like I thought it was, yeah, that moment where you're kind of a dumbass, but you just, but everybody just forgives you because you're so new. And she's like, "No, it's not fantasy. You need to add something in there. Add like in a shifter." I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm a moron." I'm like, "Oh, Ara Morin because I'm a moron." So that totally fits. So I made this character Ara Morin because I'm a moron, And she was right, and I was wrong, and I will own that to this day that she was absolutely right. And birth of Morin, the Irish Wolfhound shifter, and he is very sarcastic. He's pretty much my husband in the witty sense, because my husband's very witty. He's very funny. Usually his jokes go over my head because I'm just slow. I don't get jokes very well, but my husband is just full of wit and humor, and my daughter inherited this, and I love it. And I'm also terrified of it because she's 9 and she just school. So, and so Aramor is the most memorable character for me, and I have brought him back through the series multiple times because I love it so much, and I love him so much. He's just a fun character, and thanks to Lauren for forcing me to realize I was a dumb noob.
So is he going to get his own standalone at some point?
He got his own short story called Shifting Armorin, and it basically is about the birth of Castray, my world, and how it came to be and how shifters came to be.
Very cool.
Yes, but also because the goddess is meddling, she's kind of Greek, where she's like, I do what I want when I want, kind of a thing. So like, she's just like, you're a shifter because I don't like you right now.
Well, I mean, she's a woman, and we can be like that.
Yes.
So she's basically sort of like Hera?
Yes.
And once again, she is a woman, and we can be like that. So be careful, Dora. You're outnumbered this time.
I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole. So why don't you ask number 26?
Well, actually, I was going to, because I'm like, that's great, because I was about ready to ask if maybe she is the villain, if you have any bad guys in your books.
Oh gosh, bad guys. Basically the only bad guys are themselves. But I do have one.
Sometimes we are our own worst enemy.
Yes. I have Morgir Midas, who tries to take over the world of Castray, and it comes back in full circle in a couple novels where like he tries to infiltrate the different clans in Medora and fails, and then his brother tries to infiltrate the other clans in Medora and kind of gets close to doing like this whole dominant takeover, but then like all the clans gather and they kind of eradicate everybody, and then the goddess is like, nope, zap, world change, you're done. So I'm not saying what book that is because I don't want to
no, she's like, no, you're still here to entertain me. I'm sorry, you may have thought you fixed it, but you didn't. I like that.
Yeah. So book 6, which is Devon's Tenacity, has the biggest battle scenes in war that I ever created.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
So, if your characters ever met you in a back alley, how do you think they'd react after all you put them through? How do you see that playing out?
I see myself going, oh shit, and trying to run.
Every author does this.
Well, I think I will survive with Avely and Irie. I will come out living and breathing. Jordy, I have a feeling that she'll pin me up against the wall and hold with like a knife to my throat, being like, "What did you do?" Cleta might not care; she might be drinking, and like
that's my girl. That's my girl right there.
Oh yeah, she's legit. I love Cleta, but like all the other ones, Evan and Devin would probably want to slit my throat. But
all right,
yeah.
So that's always a fun time for them.
Yeah, I could try to talk my way out of it.
All right.
So a lot of times the world, particularly with fantasy, can be as much of a character as the books. So can you tell us some about like the world outline, like how magical is it? Is it a high magic, low magic, sprinkling of things? What?
It's pretty low-key magic in the world. So like in my short stories, Shifting Armorin, I have the magic, and everything in there has magic, but then you have this warlord who took the magic of the fairies, bent it against his will to create things, and then the magic then got absorbed and went into a different type. It went away. I can't remember the name of the world right now that I created, which is really, really bad of me. But because I made it, I should know it, right?
It's a long day. You know, it's a long day. You've slept, you've gotten up, you've been driven insane by children. It's a long day.
And worked a full day. Yeah. So it's been a day. So the magic shriveled up and it went away. It went into hiding. And so there is this nation that nobody ever goes into and everybody's scared to go into because that's where the magic happens to reside. And that's where they created dragons. And the shifters are sprinkling of the characters around that kind of like pop in when they want to just show that magic is still there. But because of what this warlord did, the magic had to go away for safekeeping. So I have a dragon in there named Kata. She's hilarious. She thinks she's hilarious too. I find she's hilarious. And she kind of just puts people in their place and says, yeah, there's magic here, but you guys are assholes, so you can't get it. So it's kind of low-key magic because, again, I'm just mainly about like the romance and the people coming together. So yeah, the magic's low-key because it's my first series and I did not have a clue what I was doing.
That's
Fake
okay.
it till you make it.
Yeah, like I said, I was a noob and I thought like I'm gonna make something that no one else has ever heard of because I'm like just legit over here. I'm gonna be like the next J.K. Rowling is what I was thinking, and I was like, I'm like looking back, I'm like I was so cute and dumb.
That's okay. We all have to start cute and dumb somehow, and or we start like JR. And
Ouch.
Ooh,
sorry, I love you, JR, but you don't have a face.
that was such a huge burn.
Oh, I'm gonna go over here and cry in the corner, but first we're gonna ask her. Jordy in Charge is clearly part of a series. I know that because it says so on Amazon. So there are currently 7 novels and 2 short stories. So is there this world done? Will there be more from these characters? What's next?
The next, the next for this would be a spinoff of any children that might be spawned of these characters.
So like Children of Castre, or would it be the same series, just linked them?
It would be the Children of Castre standalone series. So that I have all the outlines for that. I just need to find time in between working a full-time job and momming and teaching because like to do that. As for now, I'm wrapping up the Western series. I have 10 books planned in that. I got book 7 done. I also have a paranormal romance series. My editor's currently on page, I think, like 112 of it out of 89 of it. So she's working on that. And then just to make everything even more fun for me, I'm doing a sci-fi reverse harem romance because some asshole told me that I couldn't do it. I'm like, oh, aren't you cute? So I'm doing it.
Okay. All right. So we know that every literary universe has its own consistent rules of science, technology, and magic. So what sort of tech and magic can we expect? You said it's low-key magic. So what can we expect from this?
More shifters. I would have more meddling shifters in there, and I'm going to have in the spin-off of the children's series, the return of the fairies, because they went away, so they're going to come back into the world. And also more meddling dragons that will come in and branch off into the world as well. So I have outlines. I have a folder of it. If you want proof.
We believe you. So are you going to have someone come in here and be like, I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids?
Oh my gosh. I'm not turning into Scooby-Doo. But like but no, none of that. But I'm gonna try. I've been wanting to do this for like a while. I want to kill off my goddess in the world. I want to kill her off. So I'm gonna try to do that.
Okay.
So
in the hierarchy.
We have fae, we have dragons, we have shifters, but are they all wolf shifters or are they like...
No, there's different. There's Kreven and he's a wolf and he's a fox. There's Nastia and she's an owl. So there's different ones. I also have carnivorous mermaids.
Awesome.
And everybody's like, "Oh, that's a siren." I'm like, no, because mine don't sing. And they're not beautiful babes. They're really creepy.
Awesome.
So yeah, they're mermaids. So I have those, and then I just kind of like want to end the hierarchy with my goddess. So I just want to kill her off.
So can your mermaids grow legs when they get on shore, or are they only allowed in the water?
Only in the water.
Only for bath time. So my question for you is, how did you go about making them? Like, are you just pulling like the classic trope and playing with it, or how do you go about creating your magical creatures and deciding that?
I just wing it. So like I'm a total pantser. So if it just fits in and it works, I just plug it right in. Like
Hey, that works.
yeah, Lauren, my first ever editor, she goes, "You need to follow an outline. You need to make an outline." I'm like, "I can't make an outline because my brain just doesn't compute that way." And she goes, "Can you please, for the love of God, just make one outline?"
So
And what?
what you should tell them is what Chris Rodacchio, who we've had on here, says is that pantsers are writing their outline as they make the book.
Yes.
That first draft is their outline.
I think it's Rockio is how you pronounce it. He's one of the editors over at Bain Publishing. But
Like my notes of anything are just like the plainest, most bare things ever to ever be anything. So like this, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's for one of my westerns. I just have like
at least you actually started doing that. Like I've heard I've watched Chuck in and try to convince somebody to stop outlining and just start writing. So I mean,
I have like 10 bullet points of the key things that I want to hit on, and then everything else is just done. I don't outline it by chapter. I just start going. So like and number 8 in my western that I'm working on currently, because their novellas are like 30,000 words max, and I can jam those out pretty quick because usually when I'm on hold a long time for my job, I can just plug right into Google Docs and just start jamming out the words. So I just have a bullet point.
That is a nice use of hold time.
It is. I'm pretty smart sometimes.
I am sure you are incredibly smart. You deal with a lot of stuff.
And yeah, I just said in my I think bullet point 1, Kitty Vaughn gets in trouble for pickpocketing. So I'm like, okay, cool. She's a thief. Read out the words. And yeah. So I just basic minimum plot points because that's what Lauren's like, you need to start doing that. I'm like, okay. Just bare minimum things. But I total 100% pantser.
So, well, if that works for you, keep on going because you've got enough books out that clearly you're doing something right. So, was there anything about Jordy in Charge that we didn't ask that you want to tell us before we move on?
Yeah, buy it. Kidding.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of Scottish brogue in there. I pulled from reading romances like Catherine Levac, Susan Tisdale, Tanya Ann Crosby. Those are the 3 main ladies that got me hooked onto that historical medieval romance side. And so I pulled from their Scottish brogue, kind of see like how they kind of incorporated it. So it has that in there, but people have complained. They're like, it's hard to follow. I'm like, okay, I can get that, but it's fun. It's a huge fun series, and I love them all dearly. I love it. So buy it. It's 99 cents.
So clearly, we're starting to wrap this up. Are there any updates of other forms of media in the universe coming out? I know your westerns have audiobooks. Is there any plans for audiobooks for the Castray series?
I would love to do audiobooks for those if I could find the right male and female voice. That's like the tricky part. Because yeah, it's the tricky part.
You know what? I bet, because I know you'll share the link, maybe that's something people can put in their links on YouTube who they would recommend for as a male.
I would love that.
I'm curious how that would go because I've always thought that could be interesting if you had a male and female for like when you're doing like the various sexes for dialogue. But then I've seen some audiobooks get trashed for that very approach. So I wonder if that's a niche market of the audiobook market to have multiple narrators.
I don't know. I've read some reverse harems where they have multiple voices do it, and some of them are done really, really well. But I heard it's like a whole bunch of money to do that, and I don't have a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, audiobooks can be a lot to
yeah, I lucked out with some of my narrators for the westerns, and granted, like I shouldn't have used one so often as I did because the biggest complaint is that she reads too fast. But I thought it was fine for me because I could follow along fast. But people like a steady pace kind of a thing. But yeah, you can find some really decent trying to come out and up and coming narrators on ACX for a fairly affordable price. Like I think most of my audiobooks cost me like, oh gosh, between $250 and $350 to make.
Wow.
Well, that's because they're also shorter. I think that changes when you talk about longer works. Like I can't imagine Brandon Sanderson would pay for his books that amount.
Oh my god!
Oh, they go by like
I have one of
word
those
count.
audiobooks.
Yeah, it's by word count. So before we wrap this up, so you wrote this book. It's clearly fantasy. You're definitely sticking with the romance genre. You're hopping between fantasy romance, Western romance, space sci-fi, reverse harem.
Oh
Is
yeah.
there? So what? Okay, so you've got the Western. You're almost done with it. You've got the reverse harem that you're about to start. What is next for
Wait,
Erica?
what is the name of your Western series? Because I just realized I don't think you've actually ever said it.
It's the Whitman romance series.
Okay.
So yeah, it's the Whitman series. There's 6 books out. I got asked by readers if there's going to be more because they really enjoyed it. And I'm like, I really don't want there to be more, but I guess I could. So like
Well,
10 books.
Just tell them you don't know yet.
That's what I said for the past year. So I'm just like 4 more because it's 30,000 words a piece about. So I'm like, okay, I can get those done. But I'm really wanting to do my paranormal romance called Dangerous Ties. It's a series name. And my editors had this for a while, and it's in first person. So it's a complete different flip from the third person of the Castray series and the Whitman series to this new like first person point of view. So I'm having trouble distinguishing between first person and third because I go back and forth sometimes, and that's bad. So it's still out for an edit, but I'm excited for that because I really want that to come out. So that's my new thing that I want to do this year. Will be the Paranormal Romance Dangerous Ties series, the last 4 of the Whitman series, and then I'm going to do the sci-fi reverse harem off
So
the
just a
spinoff
few
thing I was
things,
in with JR. The Storming Area 51 thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm taking my main character from that.
Ooh.
And she's gonna get her own little happy harem because one person in there is like, you can't do that. Like she's military, she can't have a harem. Like, dude, bro, watch this.
I'm sensing a theme with you.
I
don't
like
like to be. I
And
don't
so-
like to be told I can't do something. The only thing I can't do is reach anything, and that's why I have a back scratcher because I pull things toward me. So I can reach things.
So we threw up the cover for To Find a Whitman. It's not letting me zoom in, unfortunately.
That's okay.
But that is the cover. I just quickly saved it off of Amazon. Of her Western, the first one. That's a very artsy style of cover. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's an 1880s era because I had to do it after the Civil War because things changed, and I also had to make sure that all the railroads hit too. This is you have to be technical with historical sides, and mine's on the historical side, whereas like the Castray series is like it's a historical setting and it has that feel to it, but it's not it.
Yeah.
Although I did have somebody tell me like once, she goes in a review, this is historical and it's not done accurately. And I'm like thinking to myself, what world, if any, in the entire history of books, did you understand like a world called Castray or a city or a town or like anything? Because like I'm pretty sure Castray did not ever exist.
So
Ever.
so that's always amused me, the idea of where the lines people draw in the sand are. Like, okay, space dragons, you were with me, but the guy didn't cuss quite enough for a sailor. That's where you lost me. Okay. And I mean, everyone's entitled to that, right? I'm not judging it. It's always an amusing thing to see where people draw their lines.
Oh
Like,
yeah, it totally is. Like it's not even I don't even market it as historical because it's really not. It's just a setting, like it's just a feel to it, but it's not it. And then people are like, this historical book is inaccurate. It's not historical. Like
I love when people tell me that there's no way an alien planet would look like this.
because every alien
We've
planet
been
looks
to
like
so many alien planets yet.
whoa. We know every alien planet looks like Canada.
oh. I love
I
that.
like Canada. They either look like Canada or the desert down in California, one or the other.
That's a joke if you didn't catch it, Erica, because all of the alien planets in Stargate were filmed in Canada, and people started. Oh, I wasn't sure if she caught the reference or she was just laughing at our banter.
I got the reference. Good grief. Everybody knows Canada's like blue.
So
Okay, so
pretty.
I'm
Plus
just
that icky
kidding.
stuff
Don't
on
hate me.
snow. But other than the sky dandruff all over the place, it's pretty.
And they have moose and people in Dudley Do Right coats. So
I love that.
Before we get the hate mail, first off, you can send the hate mail to Cisca at Cisca gmail something. I'm making this up. Speaking of contact information, Erica, can you tell listeners how they can find you?
You can find me on Facebook at EA Shanniak Romance, and I have a website page there. I have EA Shanniak at EagleCreekBooks.com. That's my website. You can find me on Instagram. I'm not hard to find. Just type in my last name. I'm
It's
like
a unique last name.
there's only like 9 people on Facebook with my last name.
So I've been saying it. I've been saying it wrong the whole dang time. Like you're saying it almost like Shamrock, Shanniak. I was like nowhere close. But if you can't spell, it's Sierra Hotel Alpha November India Alpha Kilo. Or check the comment section or the description, and we'll hyperlink everything.
Yes, and I love to do giveaways, and I love to do stuff on my Shanniak Shenanigans page on group page on Facebook. So hit me up there because I am planning to do a paperback giveaway for next month.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
We have people who love the books.
Yeah,
And
they like
Erica,
to hold it in their hands.
So Erica also did, which she's the first one I've known that did that in the indie sphere. Not to say that she's the only one, just the only one I know. She actually did some of hers in the large print because you can format those. I mean, because it's print on demand, so you can format those options as well, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I had a lot of people ask me for large prints because they're like, I can't read and I can't see. And I'm like, okay, well, I got large print. So I did large print for the Casual series and I have large print for the Westerns. And I just like to offer my readers options because, like, for a person that I can't see very well either. So, like, this I'm fine. But usually if I'm reading, I have to wear glasses. And it's hard on my eyes.
Dyslexia.
And it's hard on my eyes. So I want to offer my readers something like, I can't see worth crap. So if you can't see worth crap, you want to read too.
And enjoy the experience of reading, not just the story.
Yeah, because like the only things that you can find on Amazon sometimes that have large print are freaking crossword puzzles.
That's
or Sudoku. Sad. No thanks.
Sudoku is fun.
It's math. No thanks.
It's pattern. It's not really math.
It's not really math.
No. It's just numbers.
I don't know.
All right. Well, she has drawn the line in the sand. So send your hate mail to Erica if you love the math.
I would love that.
So you can find us on our website at anchor.fm/blasters tech and tech blades, blasters tech and tech blades. Our Twitter is twitter.com/Sierra Foxtrot SF_fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Our Facebook group is facebook.com/Blasters and Blades Podcast. And if you want to support the show, help us keep the lights on, you can do it through buymeacoffee.com/ I can't say that word today. /author J.R. Handley, and then in the comments put podcast, and it'll go towards this as an the overhead and whatnot. And so that's a show. So thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom, and we'll be sober. Although I will admit, we're going to be overpromise. That's right. We will probably be doing in the beginning to sort of build up our catalog to help people find us more than once a week, but eventually we'll hit a point where that'll stabilize and we will do once a week. They'll be airing them on Sunday evening if the YouTube gods like us enough to let me upload. So you'll be able to find them. But in the beginning, we're going to just get some content out there because we've been gone for a while. And we're intentionally, if you haven't noticed, going to be going for guests and topics that we couldn't have done under our old moniker, the Sci-Fi Shenanigans, which was very limited to just sci-fi. So for a little bit, we're going to do the fantasy. We're going to do the fantasy romance. We're going to do comics, RPGs, all the things that make Cisca's little heart go pitter-patter. All right, so thank you for sticking with us, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. It was fun.